that like I could beat him if I were, or like I wish I.
Yeah, I certainly feel the urge because I feel like the 2016 election was really an odd time and an odd outcome, and the more we learn, the more that seems to be the case.
Hello and welcome to Race to 2020, and oh my gosh, did you hear that, Jack? Hillary Clinton feels the urge.
You've been saying it for weeks, and now we have confirmation.
Well, it's not quite confirmation that it's happening, but could be, that it's happening. She wants in so badly. We hear this now, this interview that she's just done, and she says that she still feels the urge to go out there, get on the hustings, and beat Donald Trump in the next election because 2016 was, to her, such an anomaly. Hillary Clinton wants a do-over. She hasn't declared yet, but she just keeps putting this out there. Now, I don't know whether this is because she really actually has intentions of running, although I do think there is a big part of her that would absolutely love to, or if it's because she's just trying to make trouble and keep attention all on her anyway, or because, the current group of candidates out there are such a bunch of nuffies.
They're lacking.
They're lacking.
Maybe she thinks they don't have what it takes.
Maybe she thinks they don't have what it takes. But, the thing is, you viewers out there, you've been writing into us with a lot of great comments. I know a lot of you have a lot of thoughts about this Hillary stuff, and we've been talking about this last week. Some of you in the last couple of days have written in. Will Murray writes, if Hillary is the nominee, Trump will be reelected in a landslide. Well, Will Murray, it looks like if no matter who the nominee is, it's probably going to be Trump in a landslide. But yes, thanks for that comment. And Rob Adams. Now, I like this one here from Rob. He writes, no one really expected Hillary to go away, did they? She's still delusional enough to think it's her God-given right to be president. That, I think, comes down to it right there. Hillary believes that this was her destiny, that it was her God-given destiny to be president, that she has been thwarted by Trump, and there's a large part of her that feels like she has to set the cosmic scales right. Now, she has not declared that she's going to run, but this just, I think, number one, focuses on how for Hillary and all of the Democrats, it is still about relitigating that 2016 election. But it also highlights, to me, Jack, just how lousy the candidates are that the Democrats have come up with. I mean, think of all the tens, if not hundreds of millions of Americans who would be eligible to run from the Democrats in the United States for 2020. And this is the mob that they get?
And the thing that really stands out to me is just how fractured the Democrats appear to be. You would think that they've got this kind of unified approach to 2020, and you would actually think that the Republicans should be in far worse state because their president has been impeached and he's currently facing a
He's a vulnerable guy on a lot of ways.
They are very united, all things considered. And what we have here is we've got Hillary Clinton, who is really taking a lot of steam out of the races of these frontrunners by suggesting that she could come in. It throws a lot of stuff into play.
Every time she comes in, it takes...
What was she saying about Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, exactly.
She said no one likes Bernie.
No one likes Bernie. So she's always out there. She's sucking up all the oxygen in the room every time she comes out there. And, yet, even though nobody likes Bernie, well, look at the Iowa polls.
I like the idea of Bernie v. Trump. That would be very funny.
I'm with you on this, Jack. I actually think, so the Democrats have an almost existential problem here.
Yes.
They know that Bernie is really, really popular. They know that Bernie is the only candidate that they have who can peel away votes from, I think, white working-class voters. He's very strong on trade, protection issues, and things like that. He's also a barking mad socialist, so, you got to put that off to one side. But he's probably the closest to Trump on a lot of things around sort of nationalist issues and things like that, which is what Trump won on, and where the next election would have to be won by the Democrats. But the Democrats, they can't bring themselves to endorse him because Bernie is just as much of a swamp drainer by instinct as Trump is. So,
and what are the polls telling us?
Well, what the polls are telling, so this is really interesting. Now, Biden is still in the lead nationally, but Iowa, we got that next week. I think it's on the 3rd. Iowa is a really important state. Iowa is where they have a caucus system, not a primary. What this means is that it's this complicated thing where voters show up and then they sit and they vote and revote until they determine how all the delegates in their little precinct are going to go. And so it's a system that basically advantages people who are able to come out on the night, spend the time, and it advantages progressives
yes.
particularly. So in the last Iowa caucus,
Biden is probably considered to be one of the least progressive
in...
Do you remember actually had that gaffe where he came out and said, "Oh no, I'm actually a progressive"?
Yeah.
You're not Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah. So anyway, here's the thing, though. Warren is now falling right off the charts on this. Her candidacy has gone, but then Bernie is at 25 points in the cross Iowa averages and rising. Biden 22 and falling. Buttigieg, the other big progressive, 17 points and falling. So Bernie looks at this stage not unlikely to take the Iowa caucus. Now, that's really interesting because traditionally it's happened since forever. Whoever wins the Iowa caucus winds up being the Democratic nominee.
It's really interesting as well because the media establishment has turned on him quite ferally. Do you remember that we had the Elizabeth Warren sexism smear?
Yep.
Which I don't follow Bernie's politics particularly closely. They're not particularly close to my heart.
Yes.
But I don't believe that he said that a woman can't win because he's tweeted out several times in support of Hillary.
Yeah, I don't think they had that conversation.
They turned on him. It has been feral because they've seen him jump ahead.
Yeah.
But then the other really interesting thing is, and we might disagree on this, I think Bernie would be the Republicans' dream. While obviously it's anybody's chance to get in once you've got the man v man up there, Bernie Sanders, he's so radical left.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Even if you don't like Donald Trump, even if you're looking at Donald Trump and you're saying...
Because once you start to...
This guy's a jerk, I don't want to vote for him. You're like, well, I can't vote for this guy.
Yeah. I mean, but to go through all the frontrunners, all of the Democrats have to do is act normal, and none of their candidates can really do that. The closest they've got is Joe Biden. Now, you had a grab here that we wanted to show here of Joe Biden speaking the other day. Let's have a listen to that.
So, folks... But as much as he's trying to destroy me and my family, I hope I've demonstrated I can take a punch. And if I'm one nominee, he's going to understand what punches mean.
So, Jack, walk us through this here.
So this is really interesting. He's talking about Donald Trump, and he's talking about getting punched, getting sucker punched by Donald Trump. And
I can take a punch.
Yeah.
And
it's...
He always likes these sort of, fisticuff, macho sort of
He's done some
sort of
focus
things.
groups. Someone's got to show him how tough you are, Joe. You're a man's man.
He stood up to Corn Pop, remember,
The problem was that if the attempt here was to come off as tough, stable, strong, which is, I guess, this image that he's trying to display in the media, the problem here is he was slurring his words. And it plays into all these things about his cognitive state. And is he actually mentally going to be okay if he was going to be in office?
Well,
and can he beat Trump when there's the debates? Because the really crucial thing is, sure, you're debating against the other Democrats. I've noticed they're not even really debating. They ask a question. They answer with an irrelevant statement. It's not really a debate. When you're debating Donald Trump, you're debating, and he is quick, and he will come for your throat.
He'll come at you.
And there's no time for slurs. And it will come off, and Hillary Clinton did not fare very well in those debates. And I guess the big question is, for all the Democrats voting in the primaries, do you want someone who is slurring your words, who is a little bit slower, who is clearly getting older, or do you want someone a little bit quicker?
Well, I mean, Jack, we're all getting older. But the fact is that I think that for candidates like Biden and Bernie, I think that physically, I'm no medical doctor, but I just think they're physically too old for the rigors of campaigning and the job. Trump is 74 years old, but he's clearly a pretty vigorous 74. I mean, the way that he managed to campaign through the last time around and the schedules he maintains, going to these big rallies, he's still pretty...
He's having fun.
He's having fun.
A Trump rally is like a comedy show.
It's a comedy show, it's a concert, it's everything.
That's when Trump's at his best.
Bernie just seems low energy. Biden, Bernie had a heart issue on the campaign trail a couple of months ago. So you have to think about that. Biden again.
Can we talk about Pete Buttigieg?
Sure, we can talk about Pete. What do you want to talk about Pete?
I just find it.
He's young.
I just find it extraordinary.
He's healthy.
How far up he's managed to come in the polls.
Yeah.
And why do you think that might be? It says here he's at 17.
Yeah. Well, because he's a young progressive. And there's nobody else young and fresh-faced, so I think that has helped him out a lot. He's just the darling of the Silicon Valley set and certain sets in New York, but I don't think he has any real sort of appeal nationally, and I think that he's just far too young. I mean, he was...
And how do you think his progressivism would go if he was to verse Donald Trump? Because this is the whole thing with the primaries. His candidates swing so far to the left to win Iowa, and then they become tattered from a policy perspective. Their policies are so out of touch with moderates.
I think
it really hurts them.
I think Mayor Pete would be a disaster for the Democrats.
Right.
I think that he would have a huge amount of trouble just getting kind of mainstream American support. I don't think it has to do with the fact that he's gay. I think it has to do with the fact that his policies are really, really far left, and that he is also just young and really unseasoned. He's got, his experience is basically being mayor of a town of about 100,000 people, so that's not huge executive experience by basically being the mayor of a local council here in Sydney or something like that. And beyond that, he's also got, from his time as mayor, he does have a lot of issues with policing around the record of the police with the local African-American community, which will be thrown absolutely back in his face.
What are the, is this another Kamala Harris situation?
Basically, police brutality issues, under his term as mayor. Now, this would be just absolutely devastating to the Democrats, because the Democrats rely on an awful lot of African-American support in cities like Chicago, New York, Detroit, etc. And what that does is that carries with it really, really big states, So when we look at a lot of election nights, 2016 being the most recent one, you'll see a whole state like Illinois, for example, and it would have all gone for Trump except for Chicago, the little area there, but that would be enough to carry Illinois and its huge number of electoral votes over to the Democrats. Now, people have been doing some analysis on this, and it's really interesting, Jack. They have noted that right now, African-American unemployment is at an absolutely historic low, that the economy has been boosting low-wage workers most of all. So this presidency has been very good, contra all of those who keep saying, oh, well, it's just the rich getting richer and the poor staying the same. It's actually not been the case. All wages have been going up, and there are more jobs out there. That has been an absolute boon for African-American communities. Now, we're seeing in some polls that they're starting to break away from the Democrats and potentially come over to Trump in 2020. If that happens, that is hugely significant, because suddenly, if a few booths in a place like Chicago go the other way, then suddenly you could flip the entire state back over to the Republicans. So that would be really historic.
I think it also comes down into a lot of people will vote on policy and not personality. And sometimes I think we can get really sidetracked on, well, this person's unpopular and this person has a particular approval rating. And sometimes that's irrelevant if you're talking about massive social reform, if you're talking about detriment to the economy, if you're Elizabeth Warren, right? So the big difference between Elizabeth Warren and Sanders that I see is Sanders won't put a dollar figure on his plans. Elizabeth Warren wants to come through and be this kind of pseudo-democratic socialist. But then she actually outlined how she was going to pay for it, and everyone said, oh, okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
That's going to be hard. Whereas Bernie's very, very vague, so he gets away with it.
Well, he gets away with it for now. But, let's bring it back to Australia. Okay, we just had an election back in May, and what happened there? Bill Shorten, the Labor guy, he lost. One of the reasons why he lost was because when he was quizzed on the cost of his policies, particularly around climate and emissions reduction, he couldn't give an answer. You remember there was...
He wanted to reform Australia's energy system.
We're going to change it.
Costed the policy.
And then they said, yeah, but how much does it cost?
Amateur hour.
And said, we'll release that. Well, how much does it cost? We can't tell you that. And said, well, how much does it cost? Are you a climate denier? No, we just want to know how much it costs.
There was this great moment where he said, well, the cost of not acting is more than the cost of doing something now. But he didn't know either figure. So the logical question is, well, how can you determine which cost is higher
if you're not going to give us a number?
Neither figure? You're mathematically illiterate.
Exactly.
And Australians rejected the premise.
And so to go back to the United States now, if Bernie is saying, oh, we're going to do all of this stuff, but we can't put a cost on it, and what are you, some kind of, rich landholder? Yes, I own 3 properties, but who cares?
It is slightly different, obviously, because in Australia you have to vote. You cop a fine. It is. So there is about these really charismatic people that have a big following that can help bring people to the polls. So what Bernie wants, and this is what he's really relying on, is these young voters that are coming up with a lot of energy at his rallies. You look at the juxtaposition between that and Joe Biden's rallies, which has the old cold, they're stuffy. He's slurring his words. There's no energy.
Yeah.
Bernie has energy.
So, but here's the thing, though. If they do a Nancy Kerrigan on Bernie again and kneecap him, then these...
Why do they hate Bernie so much?
Because he hates them. Because he is the other side of the Trump coin. He is also a swamp drainer, not a swamp dweller.
Very funny.
And he is a huge threat to all of those guys. So, if they nobble him this time around, and if it's seen that, they just put out a hit on him, well, what's going to happen? As you said, America is not a compulsory voting state like Australia is. That means that you would have an awful lot of young voters who would stay home, and you would probably have a certain number of Bernie voters who would, point. As they did last time, break for Trump. A lot of Bernie voters went Trump last time around because on issues of trade and protecting the American worker, Trump was the other side of that coin.
I was reading this amazing line about how to become the most popular candidate, and I can't remember who said this. They said all you have to do is run against Hillary Clinton.
Well, pretty much, yeah.
Hillary Clinton attacking Bernie Sanders was the best thing that ever happened, because then there was that hashtag, well, I actually like Bernie, and she's so unpopular that she actually drove people to him.
Exactly. But I mean, so now, and of course, if Iowa turns out to be next week a complete cluster, then that could actually wind up creating some opportunity.
Same with Obama as well, I guess.
For Hillary to come in and say, all right, that's it. You mooks, I'm going to step into the ring here and sort this out.
Oh,
the question is,
I hope so.
Oh, I know. The only thing though, is that because the thing is that there are these Democrat Party things called superdelegates. So the way this whole nominating process, there are these people who are delegates, but they're not assigned to any candidate because of the primaries, and they're kind of traditionally have been the establishment Democrat way of having sort of a bit of a say over what happens in the primaries if they don't like it. It's a bit sort of like, you remember when you were in school and they would have the elections of class president, and then the popular kid who was a goof won, and then the teachers would say, nah, we're still going to give it to Jack. We're giving it to Jack.
I was the goof.
Yeah, you were the goof. Yeah, and so, but under the rules for 2020, they have changed it, so these superdelegates won't get to vote in the first round. So if we go to a contested convention, though, these superdelegates will wind up being a big piece of the pie. So, we'll talk about a lot more about that as we come closer to the conventions. But I think there's one other big story out of Washington. We do need to have a chat about this impeachment. Is it still going on? Is anybody still listening to that? Sorry, is everybody still listening? Please don't turn off. We promise this will not be completely boring. This week we had John Bolton, former National Security Advisor, now come out with his retirement plan. I mean, his book to.
So you're a bit more cynical on John Bolton's remarks than me.
Me.
The thing about John Bolton is he is detested by the left. He has much more credibility than, say, the partisan attacks which have up until now been plaguing Donald Trump. This does hurt him to a little bit. And now, I know that we were talking a bit before the show about Mitt Romney and how he does have a bit of contempt for... But he has opened up the possibility of hearing John Bolton's testimony. So if we break down what's actually happened, is John Bolton is saying there was directly quid pro quo.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump's team has been denying that there was ever this, which I think was personally a mistake, because there's nothing wrong with it. Foreign policy always
is the domain of the president.
The problem was it in detriment to the American people? Were you using it for your own gain as opposed to, helping your own campaign? So which opens up the door again to Hunter Biden, and was Trump suspicious? I mean, were they legitimate suspicions?
And I would absolutely love to open up this thing to testimony.
I want to hear as many witnesses
I want to hear witnesses because I want, this, but this is the really...
So you agree with Mitt Romney?
No, I don't agree with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney's a squish, but I do think we should have witnesses. I think that this Bolton stuff is nonsense, designed to sell a book. But
do you think, because he does have a lot of respect from both sides? I think it has.
No,
made
he doesn't.
Some, oh,
no, he's this. So everybody everybody when Bolton came in was like, oh, Trump's going to have trouble with this guy because Bolton is this like total neocon of the old school. Trump is totally like let's stop with the neocon foreign policy, but he was just trying to get people in.
Yeah.
And so that was always going to end in tears. And then, so the book, there's a guy at the CIA or wherever who is in charge of clearing books by manuscripts by people who have worked in the intelligence services and stuff like that. He is the twin brother of Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, who was the guy, the general who testified against Trump. The publisher of this is the same publisher that published James Comey's book. They are trying, and this all leaked to the New York Times just at a crucial moment in the process of the impeachment. Jack, this whole thing stinks too. By heaven, they are trying to do to him what they did to Brett Kavanaugh, which is just keep throwing more and more outlandish stuff at him and hope that it sticks. Or in the parlance of the Trump haters, the walls are closing in.
All I'm saying is the allegations that Bolton has put into his book, whether credible or not, they're perfectly fine. That's reasonable. For Donald Trump to say, no, we're going to hold back aid because we're pretty sure you interfered in the 2016 election. Now, the Democrats say that there was, because just let me finish this point. The Democrats say that there was no interference, right? They've said that in the trial. They've said that directly. Well, this was fake news. There was no... We know that there was interference. Politico reported that there was interference. Very left-leaning publication.
I know.
There wasn't interference to the degree that there was Russian interference, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't interference and that they shouldn't look into it.
Well, and also,
so
the other bit
should be looking into that.
The other bit too is that Ukraine is this klepto state. It's a completely corrupt country, Ukraine, and the question of even like what are we doing getting.
Why are they even getting aid in the first place?
Why are they getting aid in the first place? I mean, this is
insane.
This is like why like what
he should be holding aid back until he can figure out if they're trying to usurp the democratic process in America.
Exactly. So
of course he should.
So there's that. But sorry.
But just let me finish this point though, because the problem that Donald Trump made is that he didn't make that argument. So his lawyers now, and I watched the full day yesterday of the trial, and his lawyers are now making this argument. They're saying, this is foreign policy. If we're in Israel and Donald Trump's doing his peace plan now, and we're talking about getting rid of Jewish settlements to appease Palestinian pressure, etc., and then we're making a deal to not do that, and then there's like some other deal that comes back, that is a quid pro quo situation. That is how you do foreign policy.
Of course.
The allegation is that he was doing it purely to benefit himself. So now the lawyers are correctly arguing the case on a point of law, and they're saying, yeah, well, so what? Maybe he did. Maybe he did do that.
Well, the other question...
But it doesn't matter because they did influence the election and Hunter Biden is corrupt.
This is,
and
that is actually...
had every right to ask him to
Jack,
do that.
That is actually the big question. That is the big question. Is it now impossible to investigate a Biden because it might help Trump? Like, is that basically what we're talking about? Because
the point
Pam
that you
Bondi
made about his dad being caught on camera saying the exact same thing.
So Pam Bondi, who was a former Florida Attorney General, she came up and testified on behalf, ran arguments yesterday for Trump on the Biden stuff. It is absolutely devastating. She forensically picked apart how this guy, Hunter Biden, this complete wastrel son of Joe, he is the guy who has just been forced to pay child support to the stripper who he knocked up while he was married to the widow of his dead brother, Beau. I mean, this is so complicated, you need a scorecard. But so the question around Hunter Biden, the Bidens, how they've enriched themselves using Ukraine and a number of other things, completely legitimate. And if they wind up being testimony around this is going to be, I think, hugely devastating for the Democrats' number one sort of semi-sane candidate.
Mate, he's the president of the United States. They're giving a ridiculous amount of money to this corrupt state, and that corrupt state was interfering in the election. He has every right to hold back aid. The mistake that Donald Trump made was not saying that immediately, not just saying, that's what I did. The mistake is now he's on the record saying that it was, and the mistake is, and I know you disagree with me on this, I think John Bolton probably is telling... I think that's probably what he did. I would have done that. You would have done that. I just don't see a problem with that. And I don't think that is an impeachable offence. So, yes, I think the Republicans are going to get John Bolton to testify. I think we're going to hear a lot more about this. I hope so. I
would love to see testimony from the Bidens.
I hope so.
But, the thing is, though, none of this is cutting through.
It's not going to work. They're not going to impeach him. It's completely fine what he did.
And beyond that, though...
They've lost their minds.
The people, the Americans aren't buying it. Fewer Americans support impeachment now than when it started. And in fact, actually, I just want to close on this. We've got Adam Schiff, who's the guy who's been running all of this.
Yes.
He got confronted with a bunch of protesters who had a few words for him and suggested that he might want to go and move somewhere else. Have a look at this.
I keep my eye what you doing. You liar. You liar. You kill your kids. I came from Soviet, goddammit. I will talk with you. I will debate with you.
Shift him to Venezuela.
Sucker.
Move to Venezuela, Mr. Schiff. Comrade.
Move to Venezuela. That's what they said. I love that. So, if you're such a socialist, you can move to Venezuela, which is hilarious.
He thinks he's got the support. As soon as he goes out in the street, he just gets called a commie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Get back to Venezuela, you commie.
I love that. Every time we see all these things where people are like, oh, if Trump wins the election, I'm going to move to. They always want to move to someplace like Canada. They didn't want to move to Venezuela or someplace that's actually put in practice their ideals. Anyway, that's all we've got for this week. We'll be back next week. We'll have Iowa and a whole lot more. Keep the comments coming. We love them, and we'll see you next week. I'm James Morrow.
And I'm Jack Houghton.
See you next time.